Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm going to be your host for around about the next 45 minutes. This afternoon, we're looking at Sage 50 accounts, and we're specifically looking at the manual process of reconciling your bank account. So this sort of complements very nicely the bank feed session. And if you're just going straight into bank feeds, it's still quite important that you know and understand what's happening in the background with regard to reconciling your bank. But bank feeds we'll be touching on a little bit later. Can help automate the process a little bit, make it a little bit slicker. But we're just going to concentrate on really the manual process as it stands. Now, just before we get stuck into the webinar, I'll run you through a little bit of housekeeping. So as normal, you don't need a microphone for these sessions. If you do have one, you will be muted automatically and you can't unmute yourself during the session. That means if you have any questions for me today, you'll need to pop them into the questions panel. To do that, you just click the little speech bubble icon, which is on the toolbar down the right-hand side of your screen. Give it a click, it'll expand the panel. You get access to that little box in the bottom right-hand corner. That's where you can enter any comments or questions. So do engage with me. Obviously, pop your questions and your comments in there. Anything you're not sure of, don't worry. You're relatively anonymous, so don't think it's a daft question at all. If you're not sure about what you're asking or sure about a feature or you didn't quite get something, let me know. Just pop it in there. Remember to click send, otherwise I won't see them. There is a copy of today's slides. Those are available to download via the little handout icon, which is again on your toolbar. And as usual, we record all of our sessions and include a link to the recording on your follow-up email. You'll receive that follow-up email round about an hour after we finish. So it should be what we're looking at about, we'll be finished about 2:45 today, so about 4:45, you'll receive that email. That will include your link to the recording. It'll include a link so you can register for our other upcoming webinars. So if you're new to them, you think, oh, good idea, these, I'll attend lots more. Then get yourself registered. They're all free to attend. We've got loads of sessions throughout August and September, just about running daily at the moment. So do get yourself registered. If you can't attend, don't worry, you just get sent a link to the recording afterwards. There will also be a link to the recordings page itself. So if you've missed any sessions, and maybe we don't have that session coming up in the near future, and you don't want to hang around waiting for it to be sort of scheduled in the future at some point, then do take advantage of the recordings page. So well over 100 recordings on there now. So loads to go at to help you get more from your software. Right, now this is what we're going to be covering in today's session. So hopefully this will give us a good run through of the process of manually reconciling your bank account. So we're going to start with a little bit of theory. So a little bit of an introduction to reconciling. So what is a reconciliation? Why do you do it? What are the benefits? We'll then run through a series of demonstrations. So the reconciliation screen itself can be quite daunting when you first look at it, or if you're fairly new to it. Loads of options in there. So we're going to go through that screen, explain a little bit about the settings that you have in regard to reconciliation, what the reconciliation process itself looks like, but also what happens in the background when you complete that reconciliation, so that if you do encounter an issue going forward, such as maybe you delete a bank reconcile transaction, what's the knock-on effect? So understanding what happens in the background can give you a much better understanding, just in case something does go wrong in the future. Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to touch on bank feeds today. We run separate webinars for that. There are recordings for that as well. We run bank feeds fairly regularly, so we tend to run them each month. And then once we've done that, we'll explain more about the additional support. And if there are any outstanding questions, I will try and pick them up as we go, but if there's anything outstanding, we'll try and cover those as well. So if we've got time, we could always run through a few extra demos here and there as well. Right, let's crack on then. As I say, do keep your questions coming. Now, before I start, I'm going to ask you a quick question. So if you don't mind, I'll pop a poll on your screen. So this is just for me to get a little bit of background on your knowledge of reconciling and the option within the software. So a simple question, have you personally reconciled a bank account in Sage before? So a simple yes or no. I'm not on about the company, I'm on about you personally. Have you done that process before in Sage? So if you don't mind, do get involved. choose an option. Remember to click submit. Excellent. I'll just wait till I get a good percentage you have voted for that. Spot on. So actually everyone today, I'll not share the results with you because everyone who's attended today, we don't have that many of you, but everyone that's attended has said, yes, I've reconciled before. So if you have, some of you will be very experienced in that and others maybe not so much. Still a bit apprehensive about doing a reconciliation here and there. Either way, hopefully you'll be feeling a bit more confident, and you never know, you might pick up some tips along the way, even if you have reconciled many times before. Right, so let's start with that little bit of theory then. So appreciate everyone's voted to say you have reconciled, but just to cover that quick bit of theory. So what is a reconciliation? Well, in Sage, it's almost like a ticking exercise. So when you get your bank statement, you're going to match those transactions and check that those transactions have been entered in your Sage account software. So it's just the process of matching them. So running through that statement almost and ticking off the transactions in Sage to say, right, yeah, that one's been entered, it's this one here. If it hasn't been entered, you can enter it there and then. So it's almost like that ticking off exercise. So quite straightforward when you think of it like that. Benefits wise, obviously accuracy, because you're comparing your bank statement to your actual Sage accounts, it makes sure that everything has been entered. So the two match, it means that the values match as well. So you'd be checking that sort of thing as you go through that reconciliation. Security wise, again, everyone's probably heard about bank accounts being hacked and fraudulent payments and things like that. So again, as you go through your bank statement, you're checking for, should the transactions that are there, should they be there? Is there anything gone through that shouldn't have? So maybe one of your employees made a payment and they shouldn't have. That type of thing. But it also increases your awareness of your cash flow position as well. So what has and hasn't cleared, and also the current balance of your account. Now, we often get asked about how often should you do the reconciliation? Historically, you probably would have done that on a monthly basis. So you might still be in that position, but historically, you probably would have got your bank statement through the post on a monthly basis. And that's when you would use that statement to compare those transactions against your accounts to make sure that everything's entered, it's accurate, etc. These days, a lot more common to do it weekly, if not daily. For some, it's often the first task of the day, checking that bank balance, going into your online banking. Much easier to access that information these days. So getting into your online banking, having a look, right, what transactions have cleared in the last 24 hours? Has that been entered into your accounts? So it's up to you how often you do that. For some, you might have a really big reconciliation, depends how many transactions go through your bank. For others, it might be minimal. You might just have a handful of transactions each week that go through the bank. So you might think, actually, it's not as necessary to do it as frequent. Now, bank feeds, I am going to touch on a little bit later on, but bank feeds, a free secure service. And basically what you'd be doing is you'd be setting up a link between essentially your bank account and your account software. And what that would do is it would download your bank transactions. What you can then do, that would be the equivalent of you receiving or downloading a bank statement, and you can compare that list of downloaded transactions against what you've entered in Sage accounts. And then there's various options for matching up the transactions either automatically or manually, but also you've got the rules option, which is a fab feature for bank feeds, where when you download a bank transaction, if the software then recognizes that based on the rules that you've set up, you can say, right, I know what to do with that one. I'll post that as let's say a payment into your accounts for you. And it could do it automatically, saving you time. Meaning that obviously you don't have to enter it. Anyway, what we'll do is we'll get stuck into the demonstration itself. Now, for those that are using well, I think everyone said they did. They've done a reconciliation before. If you haven't looked at bank feeds before, or maybe you did it, but it was quite some time ago, take another look. Either watch the webinar recordings or get yourself registered for one of our upcoming live sessions. But we're going to get stuck into some demonstrations at this point. Now, when you go into reconcile, the first thing that's going to pop up when you click that reconciliation option is the statement summary window. Now, it contains quite a bit of information on there. A lot of it's already filled in for you. So things like the bank account, it's going to do that for the bank account you've got selected. It'll have a statement reference. A statement reference is just based around your bank account number. So the actual, essentially the nominal code that's used in Sage. So on the screenshot there, it's 1200. It'll have your date in reverse order. So the screenshot was done on the 29th of September 2023. And then it'll have a number on the end. So in this case, 01. Now that 01 just, it's used as, it's going to be because it's the first time I've reconciled that bank account on that date. So if I was to do a reconciliation, finish it off, and then I was to go in and do another one, it would start incrementing that number on the end. I'll explain a little bit why a little bit later on, why that's used, etc. You've got your ending balance. So if you've got your statement or you're referring to your online banking, whatever closing balance, whatever that balance is that you're trying to agree to, that's what you want to be entering in your ending balance. You're going to be keying that into the software, into that box. The statement date, when does your bank statement run up to? So if you're doing it up to today's date, obviously it'll pick that up automatically for you. But obviously if you're going sort of retrospectively and maybe you're backdating your reconciliations, you can amend that date. That date has two purposes. One is it acts as a filter. So when we get into the bank reconciliation screen, it'll only list the transactions that are on or prior to that date that you enter. Anything after that date, it'll be filtered from that list. And it just means if you are looking back historically, trying to reconcile, it means that you're not, you haven't got that list of recent transactions which are just cluttering your screen. It gives you a fighting chance of getting that done quite quickly. You've got an option to reverse a reconciliation. We can touch on that a little bit later if you've got time. And then there's boxes for interest earned and account charges. Now, probably the first time you'll be aware of any of those is when you come to do your reconciliation, when you get your statement. So you can enter them there and then if you want. I would always recommend that you don't enter them at that point, and you actually enter them when you're working through your bank statement, when you get to those transactions on that statement. That's probably the best time to enter them. Right, what we'll do, I'll share my screen and we'll get stuck into a bit of a demo for you. Now, there are a number of settings for bank reconciliation, which I'll quickly show you. You'll find them by going into settings and then bank defaults. So the first one to quickly mention is this one here, group items in bank rec. So the second option down on the left here. Now, what this is designed to do is to potentially group transactions together. Now, you would only ever really use this option if you've got, say, a number of customers, which maybe you get, let's say you invoice them separately, but when you come to be paid by that those customers, it's maybe like a head office that pays, or one of the companies pays on the other's behalf as well. So the only way you can show those individual invoices being paid off is to enter individual receipts. So those are individual transactions. So if you enter those transactions, potentially it can group them together on your bank reconciliation list, just to reduce that. And so it correlates to your bank statement a bit more. Next one to mention is this fourth option, create bank reconciliation PDF. Now this option, it will be ticked by default. I would always advise you leave it ticked. And what will happen is when you finish your reconciliation and you click the button to say, right, that's it done, I agree with everything. It flags your transactions, etc. What it will do is it will create a PDF copy of what you've just reconciled, which essentially is going to be the same as your bank statement. So that list of the transactions that you say, right, I've matched these ones this time round, it will create a PDF copy of that. Now, if it's ticked, it will create that PDF file. If it's not ticked when you reconcile, it won't. And it won't do it retrospectively. So if you didn't create one at the time and you've already reconciled, you can't then go back and create it again. So leave it ticked. Then if you realize, actually, I don't want those PDFs, you can always manually delete them. The final setting I'm going to quickly demonstrate to you before we jump into the reconciliation itself is within bank accounts. And if I go into a bank record, there's a little checkbox here within each of your bank records, no bank reconciliation. So if it's an account that you don't want to reconcile, so a bit like this one, we might not have many transactions going through this account. You think, well, actually, I don't need to reconcile that one. You can tick the box, save it. Now, the thing to be aware of is if you highlight that account and then click the reconcile option on the bank toolbar, when that little tick box is selected, you'll get this message saying the bank account selected has been marked as not requiring bank reconciliation. You just get an OK option. So I can't get at that. The only thing I could do is go back into that record, take the tick out, save it, and then this time with it highlighted, when I click reconcile, it'll bring up that statement summary. So if there's any accounts like that, where you're getting that message, that's what you need to do. Right, what we're going to do though, we're going to reconcile this account here, this account 1200. So I'm going to highlight that one. We'll click reconcile at the top. And we get the statement summary. So again, just to quickly go over that information, bank account and the description, just pulls it up from this information in the back here. So 1200, and the account is actually called bank current account on mine. So it'll pull through whatever you've got as the description. Obviously, if it's come up with the wrong one, it just means you've got the wrong one highlighted on that list. Just a case of cancel out, select the right one, click reconcile. Your statement reference, I mentioned that one earlier. So it picks up your bank account number by default. It's then got the date in reverse order, and then it's got 01 tagged on the end. Now I can change that if I want to. So if you've got a paper statement, for instance, it's probably going to have some sort of reference number on there. So you can change it to whatever you want. You might name it after your bank and then put the date in or something like that. It will use this reference for the file name of the PDF file that gets created automatically if you had that little box ticked that we looked at earlier. Ending balance. You can see in my case, it's picked up the ending balance from the bank accounts list. I'm going to change that. I'm going to change mine to minus 474. So I'm looking at my statement. I've got a closing balance. That's what I'm trying to agree to. So I want to try and agree to 474. Statement date. When does your statement run up to? Now in my case, I'm playing catch up. So I'm going to do 18th of January 2025. So remember, that acts as a filter as well. Any transactions that I've entered that are dated after that date, they will not be listed in my reconciliation window. The other options I'm going to ignore for the time being. I did mention that things like interest earned and account charges, I would enter those later on if there are any. I'm going to touch on those a little bit later as well. So for now, we're just going to click OK. Now, I think this is the daunting part when you first come to do a reconciliation. There's loads of options on here, loads of transactions, loads of buttons, loads of totals. So we'll quickly run through just so you know what they are. Now, this little section at the top here, we'll quickly get this out the way. So statement reference, it pulls it through from that statement summary. Similar for the end date and the end balance. If you want to go back and access that, you can just click that little pencil icon, brings up the statement summary. I can change it on that screen if required. But I can just click into the boxes as well and change it at this point. So that's a nice easy one to get out the way. What we've got on the main part of the screen is we've got these two big boxes. The top box is what's termed your unmatched transactions. So these are bank transactions that have been posted to this specific bank account that are dated on or prior to the date that you've entered. If they're dated after that, they wouldn't be listed at this stage. They'd be filtered from that list. And also, they are transactions that haven't yet been flagged as having been reconciled. Have not come in so far and selected a transaction and say, right, that's cleared my bank. So that's the criteria for a transaction to be listed in that top box. It's going to be a bank transaction posted to the bank in question that we're reconciling. It must be dated on or prior to that end date at the top, and also it mustn't have already been reconciled. So that's the unmatched transactions box at the top. The box at the bottom was what we would term the matched transactions. Now, there's only one value in there as it stands, and that's the last reconciled balance. Now, the last reconciled balance, if you've never reconciled before, which I know all of you said you had, but if you've never reconciled before, you're either going to have nothing in there, or you will have a balance equivalent to your opening balance when you first set up your bank account. But this balance, this last reconcile balance, I always try to describe this as it's the sum of all of the transactions on this bank account that are currently flagged as reconciled. So when you finish your reconciliation and you've got that balance that you agree to, that closing balance will be the opening balance for the next reconciliation. So your last reconcile balance, that's what that is. Now, with that agreed when you last did your reconciliation, but maybe it doesn't when you've come back in, these days you'll get some little warning here and there saying it might be because of this, but it means that for it to have changed, something must have changed to that group of transactions. So if you think you might have a list of receipts and payments and other transactions in there, so that group, something has changed to that group. Is it you've deleted one of those transactions, one or more? Maybe you've reconciled additional transactions, so to essentially adding to that group. Maybe you've amended the value of one of the transactions. Maybe you've edited a transaction and actually you've moved it from one bank account to another, so it no longer sort of resides in that group of reconciled transactions for this bank. So if it has changed, that's going to be the reason why. Now, when you first come into this screen, this is what you want to check, this balance at the bottom. Does it agree with the opening balance or where you left off, essentially? So that's your starting point. Does it agree? If it does, great. If not, if you need a little bit of assistance with that one, do get in touch with our support team. They can discuss that with you in a lot more detail than what I can do on a webinar. So make sure that's right. What we then do is, let's say we're armed with a statement or we've got our online banking open. We're ready to start matching off those transactions. So we look for our first transaction. On our bank statement, we'll say it's our rent payment for £780. What I'm looking for is, have I entered that transaction and is it listed in this top box? Can I see it? To help you with scrolling up and down as well, you can, if you hover over sort of the divide between the two boxes, you can move it so that you've got the bigger box at the top. Probably find it's a little bit more beneficial then, a little bit quicker to do your reconciliation then as well. So we're looking for that transaction. So if we find it, we highlight it, and then what we'll do is we click match at the bottom. Now what that does, it moves it from the top box into that bottom box. Now when you do that, and I always say this is the foolproof method, when you match a transaction, check your running balance. So in this balance column, mine now says 220. Does that agree with your bank statement? Yes, right, let's move on to the next one. If it doesn't, you've just done something wrong. Maybe you looked and thought, well, actually, oh yeah, I know it's that transaction, but you haven't checked the value. Or maybe the value was entered as a receipt rather than a payment, so that when you match it, your running balance gets affected the wrong way by that, the value of that transaction. So every time you match, check that running balance. Does it agree? Yes, let's move on to the next one. So the next one, we're just going to say it was a payment we made to one of our suppliers, £700. Can we find it? Right, it's this one here. Now that just says purchase payment. I can't really see which supplier it's for. You might have a number of those from customers or suppliers, and you, other than the value, you can't really see who it's for. So what you can do is right-click on your column headings, and there's an option to show the account reference. So I'll switch that on, and I can now see it's a purchase payment, and it's for the account ATR. Is it the right one? I'm going to say yes, it is. So I'll highlight it, I'll match it. When I match it, moves it to the bottom box. Check that running balance. If it's right, move on to the next one. Now, just in case anyone's thinking, well, why has it gone red? Where it goes in red, it just means that the running balance has gone negative. That's all that refers to. Doesn't mean you made a mistake or anything. It just means that the running balance is now essentially overdrawn. And it's pretty much a case of repeating that process. So we'll highlight a transaction, match it. Does it agree? Running balance agrees. Right, let's move on to the next one. Now you can highlight more than one transaction simultaneously. So let's say we've got some sales transactions, and I think, right, well, it's these four. Maybe I've only got one transaction on my bank statement, but I can see on the bank statement, right, they add up to £696. When I highlight a few transactions, I get a running total here on the right-hand side. See if I deselect one, it changes. So when you make your selection, again, rather than you don't want to test your math skills, but rather than you sit there with your calculator and try to add them up and have I got the right ones, it just does it for you. I'll highlight those four, click match, it moves them down to that bottom box. Now let's just resize this again. In the middle, we'll drag the bar between the two so you can see more of the bottom box now. And again, just a case of repeating that process. Now there's a little shortcut as well. One is rather than highlight it and click match, what you can do is you just spot the right transaction. Right, I'll double click it. When you double click a transaction, it moves it to the opposite box. Similarly, if you've selected a transaction, moved it to that bottom box, you want to move it the other way, you can either highlight it, click on match, or again, double click it. It moves it back. I'm going to say that's the right one. I'll double click it, it moves it to the bottom. Check that running balance. It's spot on. I'll move on to the next one. Right, what I'll quickly do is I'll just select these other ones and I'll match them. I'll move them down to that bottom. Excuse me. So it's quite a repetitive process, but do follow that sort of what I always describe as the foolproof method. Match your transactions, check that running balance. Does it agree? Yes, it does. Right, move on to the next one. If it doesn't, you've just spotted something where you've maybe made a mistake when you've keyed it in. So is it a case you select a transaction, but actually the decimal point, when you've keyed it in, you put the decimal point in the wrong place, or you've keyed it in as a payment rather than a receipt, or vice versa. So everything looks right, it's just the value's entered as a payment rather than a receipt. Right, now this transaction, I'm going to say, right, that hasn't appeared on my bank statement yet. That's fine. I'll just leave it. It's a check. Maybe my accountant, they haven't cashed it yet. They haven't paid it into their bank account as at the time when I got the bank statement. But what if you come across a transaction when you're working through your online banking or your bank statement and you can't find that? So let's say I'm looking at my bank statement. I can see my customer's paid a deposit. They paid me online. I've not entered anything for that yet. I've got no transaction in that top box. So I need to key something in. So you've got your standard sort of bank transaction options along the top of this window. So customer receipt, give it a click. I'll choose the relevant customer. You can see when I do that, there's nothing outstanding. So I'm going to say this one's a deposit. Put the right date in. So again, remember I was reconciling up to put the 18th, and I'm just going to say online for the reference. And I'm going to say they've paid a deposit of £100. So there's nothing to match this specific transaction against. So I'm just going to save it. When I do that, because it's essentially a deposit, nothing to match it against, I'll get that standard message. There's an unallocated payment balance of, in this case, £100. Do you want to post it as a payment on account? So I'm going to click yes to that prompt. Now that's that done. If I go close out of this window, I'm back to the bank reconciliation window, and basically the software's entered that transaction into my accounts now, and I can see that transaction. I can see at the bottom. So not only does it enter it into my accounts, but it automatically matches it for me as well. Obviously, once I've done that, check that running balance. Does it agree? Yes, move on to the next one. Now I'm going to say at this stage, my last transaction on that statement is some bank charges. Now bank charges, just coming back to what you mentioned earlier, probably the first time you hear about those is when you see it on your bank statement. So to enter that normally, we'd enter that as a bank payment. I'll just click it at the top. And then just fill in the details just as normal. So account 1200, I'll put the date in again. I'll choose the 18th. Just say charges. Nominal code. 7901 for bank charges, if you're using the default nominal code list. I'll ignore the department. I'm going to ignore the project options as well. Details, I'm just going to say bank charges. Obviously, you might put things like date ranges and things like that in, or whatever you want to put. It's just a text-based field. And I'm going to say I've incurred £50 of bank charges. Now we come on to the tax code. Now, obviously, it's picked up T1 by default, but bank charges in the UK are categorized as being exempt. So you would use T2. It's quite common that people will put bank charges in with either T9 or T0. Now, if you've used T0, nothing really to worry about in that respect. But if you've used T9, it means that that value would not have been declared on the VAT return. So if you have been using T9, maybe speak to your accountant or HMRC on the best course of action. So £50 net, T2 tax code, because as I say, they're categorised as being exempt of VAT. And all I'm going to do there is I'm going to save it. Again, it enters that transaction into my accounts for me, and it automatically matches it for me. Check your running balance. Does it agree? Yeah. Right, what's next? Now, actually, in my case, that's all the transactions matched and everything sort of agrees at this point. But obviously, we've got loads of other options to mention on this screen. First one to mention is obviously bank reconciliations. They can take a little while to do. Depends how many transactions you've got to go through. You might not be in a position to be able to just go through it all in one go. You might have to do it in stages. So you can save your progress. Just click the option at the bottom. You get this message pop up. So we just OK that message. It'll close out. And then when you are ready to pick up where you left off, just be a case of back into bank accounts, select that account, into reconcile. You'll get this previous statement message. Now, at this stage, you want to click Use Saved. If you click Discard Saved, we're back to where we were at the start of the session with all those transactions back in that top box. We want to click Use Saved to pick up where we left off. And that's exactly where I am. Now, options along the top. View History. I click that. Takes me into a folder where I can see any previous reconciliations or those PDF copies that have been created, which I don't have any in my case. You've got an option to create a report. Report will give you a list of this information that's on your screen. You've got your standard sort of bank transaction options. You've got the option to print a list. And you've also got the option to send to Excel. If you click Send to Excel, just click on that and see where it's going to just open on my other screen. So I'll drag that across so you can see it. So this is what I would get from my screen when I click Send to Excel. It sends all that information across. So it's got the basic information at the top. It's got the one transaction still listed in that top box for the unmatched items. And then it's got the items that I've matched in the order that I've matched them as well. So it's still got that detail in there as well. Some people like to work off that. I'm just going to close out. So that's those options along the top. Coming down the side, the Find option. The idea of that one, if you've got loads of transactions, you can click Find and you can choose what it is you want to search for. So it might be a value, for instance, rather than you endlessly scrolling up and down that list trying to find it. You've got the swap and the clear. You've got that for both boxes. Handy little options, those. I'll use the bottom box just so I can demonstrate what it does. So if I highlight those four and then click swap, it will reverse the selection. So you probably only ever use this if you've got quite a small reconciliation. So if you just got really a handful of transactions, you might think, well, rather than go through click, 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 click and do that 10 times, highlighting the transactions that have appeared in your bank statement, you might think, well, actually the only one that hasn't cleared is that one. You might highlight that one and click swap to then reverse that selection. Clear, it just removes any highlights. So this obviously swap clear, this works for the top box. Swap clear, the bottom, works for the bottom box. You've got totals. Got two of those boxes, one for the top, one for the bottom. Again, as you highlight transactions, it'll add them up for you. So if you're doing the maths, you've got match. Obviously, you highlight the transaction, you click match, it'll move it to the bottom. And similarly, if you've got a transaction highlighted at the bottom, if you click unmatch, it'll move it back to the top. The only other two options that you may have noticed, these two arrows. And this is to rearrange the transactions at the bottom. So if you have moved a few transactions out at the same time, you think, well, actually this insurance payment here, it appears just after that sales receipt. So I can highlight that, use the arrow keys to move it around that list if I need to, because you've got up and down. You can only move one at a time though, something to be aware of. Now, when you think you're finished, first of all, you're going to have this little option here, this little calculation. Obviously, your difference should be 0. So your matched balance is your running balance. That will keep changing as you match transactions. Your statement balance is basically this figure at the top. Just brings it down, and one minus the other Is there a difference? Just a basic calculation for you. So when you think you finished, that should be 0. If you've got a paper statement as well, you've probably got total money in, total money out for the period. So you can compare that to total payments and total receipts. Now, other than that, you've got your save progress and you've got your reconcile option. Now, your reconcile option, if I give it a click, you get a little progress bar. And what it's doing at that point is it's saying, right, you finished the reconciliation, I'm going to flag them to say these transactions have now cleared my bank account. So they're now flagged as being reconciled. And that's the reconciliation complete at that point. So quite logical. The more you do it, probably the quicker you're going to get with that, the more confident you're going to be as well. Just want to quickly go through what's happened in the background. Now, if we pop into bank accounts first of all, and that bank record that we just reconciled, if I double click to go into that bank record, 2 fields are updated, these 2 here. So one, it records the date that I reconcile up to. And secondly, it records that balance. So what was the balance that I agreed to when I reconciled? So that's how you can see when an account was lost reconciled. Go into the record, you can see that date. If I go into the memo tab, I'll have that statements folder, and in there you will have your PDF copy. If I open that one, just so you can see what it looks like, essentially this should be the same as your bank statement. So it's got the transactions, the ones that are moved into that bottom box. It's got the summary information as well, the date, the statement date, the date that I actually performed that reconciliation. It's got the transactions that are matched in the order that they were matched as well. And that's just a PDF copy. So similar to your bank statement. It will list your reconciliation on the reconciliation tab. So I've got some basic details here. If I needed to, if I've made a right mess of that and I think, oh, I'd rather just start again with that one rather than trying to manually undo it, I can come into this screen, I can highlight the one I want to get rid of, and I can reverse it. It'll just, all those transactions that were flagged, they'll just be back to where they were at the beginning of the session. And then finally, the other thing that it does, if we pop into the transactions list, is we'll just pick on that bank charges that I just entered. So this bank payment that we entered for bank charges, 2 things happen. One is that in the bank column, we now have an R indicating that a transaction is reconciled. Remember that there's accountancy fees that are left behind. That one has an N indicating it's not reconciled. And the bank rec date column will show the date that you were reconciling up to when that transaction was flagged. So you can see I've got a few transactions that are all dated with that reconciliation date on there. It just means you've got that little bit of traceability should you need it. Just going to quickly pick up on Charlie's question there. Can you sort the bottom ones by date or by details? So going back to the reconciliation window, let's see if I've got any other transactions. I think I've just reconciled them all, but let's see what we've got. If I just OK that, oh, we've got a few. So if I just quickly match those, you can see that I can't click on those headings at this point. So you can't rearrange that list. I think the idea behind that is you wouldn't really want to, because you want these transactions to be in the order of that you've matched them. You can do it for the top box. So I just unmatch all of those again. Put them in like value order, for instance. If I want to put them in descending order, I just click that column heading again. It'll do that for me. So you can do the top box, but not that bottom box. Hope that makes sense, Charlie. Right, I'm going to quickly pop back to the slides. I just want to quickly mention a little bit about bank feeds. I'm not going to demonstrate bank feeds for you. If you want to see bank feeds in action, please get yourself signed up for one of our live webinars, or the recordings are available on the list. So when you do get that follow-up email, there will be a link on there included for you. Now, bank feeds, if you've not come across those before, it's a way of essentially connecting your account software to your bank account. Now, it's a one-way link. It doesn't upload anything to your bank. So if you entered a payment in Sage, it wouldn't push that into your bank account. It's just a way of essentially of almost like automatically downloading your statement. So as transactions clear your bank account, that information will be downloaded to the bank feeds area. So the idea is you download them. It's a bit like having your statement in front of you, but it'll be on screen. And then you can match those against your Sage transactions, or you can post new ones on the go. But one of the big benefits of bank feeds is the rules option. So rules option, you can set up to 300 rules. And it means that when transactions download, if you've got a rule set up and it recognizes that transaction, it can automatically post that into your accounts for you, saving you time. So think about all those direct debits and standing orders that you might have. You're probably sitting keying them in manually each month. Let the software do that for you. Get your bank feed set up and then get some rules set up as well. So really easy to use as well. A little bit daunting probably when you first use it because there's quite a few options in there, but once you've done it a couple of times, you'll find it really, really simple. And it can be a massive time saver as well. So do get yourself signed up for those webinars if you haven't already. Right, if you have any final questions, please pop them in there. I'll pick them up in just a moment. Remember, if you want a copy of today's slides, those are available to download. And the follow-up email containing the link to the recording of today's session, that will be with you in round about an hour's time. Loads of information available from our help centre. So if you get stuck on anything, or you're learning a new area of the software, or you get an error message, or need to know how to complete a certain process, do check out our help centre. Some great information in there to help you get more from your software. Also running sessions on Copilot at the moment. So if you've heard about that, but maybe a bit don't really understand what it's about, if you want to see that in action, there are live webinars available. So get yourself booked on those as well. Again, they're on the same list that's included in your follow-up email. Right, now that brings us to the end of the session. I haven't got any outstanding questions just yet, but I'll give that another 30 seconds or so just to see if any do come through. If you think of anything afterwards, have a look in our help centre, get in touch with our support team, that's what they're there for. But otherwise, as you leave today's session, and I hope you've enjoyed it, found it useful, if you can take a minute to complete that survey, it'd be really appreciated. And again, watch out for your follow-up email. So get yourself registered for some of those other sessions as well. Right, still no additional questions. We'll end the webinar just at that point. Once again, many thanks for coming along. Do take that minute to complete the survey, and I hope to see you on some of the other sessions very soon. Many thanks.